Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the 2025 Living Well Wednesday program series. My name is Cassidy Collins. I'm the Family and Community Wellness Agent for Coffee County K-State Extension, and I will be your host for today. Our Living Well Wednesday is a virtual learning series hosted by K-State Extension family and consumer science professionals from across the state of Kansas. Our topics cover a wide variety of essential skills that empower you and your family to live, work, and thrive. Before we get started, we do want to go over a few housekeeping rules. First, be respectful and open of others throughout our presentation today. Feel free to type your questions into the Q&A box and comments into the chat box. The Q&A box does have the anonymous feature, so if you would prefer your question coming to us without others seeing it, be sure to use the Q&A box. We will have chat monitors today that will help monitor those questions, and we will make sure we get those answered as we get towards the end of our presentation today. Today's session will be recorded and will be posted on our Living Well Wednesday webpage, along with additional resources from today's presentation. You'll be able to find all future and past programs on our Living Well website, and a link will be posted in the chat with that link. We want to acknowledge that K-State Extension is an equal opportunity employer. Therefore, we do not discriminate. So if there's a special request or concern that you need to allow for you to attend our programs, please let us know, reach out, and we will do our best to accommodate those. And lastly, we want to thank our presenter for joining us today. Ms. Chelsea King is the Nutrition, Food Safety, and Health Agent for Johnson County K-State Extension. And with that, I will let Chelsea take it away for us today.
Thank you, Cassidy. So today we're going to talk about energy drinks. So we're going to kind of talk about what that definition is. We're going to talk about obviously trends and the popularity of them, the broader picture of kind of caffeine recommendations. As we know, energy drinks, that kind of primary source is the caffeine that we find in them. But then we're also going to talk a little bit more about the different ingredients that you'll find in a variety of the energy drinks on the market. We're going to talk about the effects of caffeine, positive and negative. And then we're also going to talk about ways to boost your energy without those energy drinks. So to get started, let's dive right into the definition of what is an energy drink. So the Food and Drug Administration, commonly known as the FDA, defines energy drinks as a class of products in liquid form that typically contains caffeine, and it may or may not have other added ingredients. So some fun, interesting facts is the first energy drink appeared in the United States in 1949. And this was kind of a caffeinated energy drink, or excuse me, a caffeinated soda from the Jolt Cola. And then it wasn't until probably 1997 when Red Bull was introduced that I would say, and many people agree, that energy drinks really kind of took off. So they were introduced in 1949, but really probably started gaining popularity in the late 1990s. Interesting, there are more than 500 different energy drink products available in the US. And so when we talk about the products, if there is a certain brand, they might have 10 different flavors or 10 different varieties. So energy drinks, it's not just the companies, but all their different products. So there are many, many, many different products available to consumers in the US today. And then annual energy drink sales have experienced tremendous growth. There was estimated sales accounting for about 2.8 billion back in 2015. And then in 2020, it jumped to 12 billion. And then it's projected to reach over 100 billion by 2030. So that market is just, again, continually to increase. And many of you may agree that you've probably seen a surplus on the store shelves as well as convenience stores, and they're becoming more and more common. More and more people are consuming them. So we know that the consumption is rising particularly among teens, young adults, and athletes. Some common reasons for this increase in this specific audience is it's promoted for energy, focus, performance, taste, and then the social influence. So a lot of these are definitely marketing toward that younger audience. And so we know that marketing is abundant everywhere we go, no matter if it's a beverage or food. So there is clever marketing messages that can entice our consumers. So if somebody is wanting to improve their performance on the sports field, they're going to be drawn to a marketing claim on an energy drink that it says it's going to enhance your performance, increase that mental sharpness. If somebody is trying to be a little health conscious, they might see that zero sugar and automatically think that, okay, it's a little bit better for me than this other energy drink. There's also a lot of claims about natural energy. So a lot of these are that marketing that entices those younger audiences specifically to consume them. And then, of course, we know that the bright, colorful packaging and the images also appeals to younger individuals. If you've seen some of the energy drinks, you know that they are loaded with a variety of different colors. Often they're multicolored. They have different images on them. The text is in different fonts. So it is kind of appealing again to that younger audience. Somebody who is a business person isn't going to necessarily maybe drawn to this bright, big, colorful package that they're going to be taking with them to and from different meetings, where teens and young adults, it's not as much of a priority for them. It's actually a draw to have that bright, colorful packaging. And then the other thing with our energy drinks and the popularity is that consumers are often confused about the different caffeine containing beverages. So we know energy drinks, but there's a lot of sports drinks that also then will say that they have caffeine or that they enhance performance or improve mental sharpness or whatever it might be. And then you even have some of those caffeinated sodas. You'll often find some brands have a caffeine-free soda for those who are trying to avoid caffeine. So sometimes that can be very confusing that if somebody is drinking caffeinated soda, they might think that a caffeinated energy drink is equal and that it's kind of on that same playing field. But with energy drinks, we do know that most energy drinks fall under the dietary supplements category and do not actually fall under like a beverage, such as maybe a soda would be falling under. So, dietary supplements we know are not approved by the US Food and Drug Administration, nor are they regulated. So, that is one of the dangers about these dietary supplements in the form of these energy drinks, is that there is really no oversight. The FDA has recently taken action on products that have high caffeine levels that have been raised a public concern. But as of now, there's really no strict guidelines or oversight when it comes to those dietary supplements. Manufacturers and distributors are responsible for evaluating the safety and labels of their products. So it's put back on the manufacturer, which may or may not have that open transparency as something like the FDA does when they're regulating food and different other components like medications. And then the FDA also states that by law, food companies are responsible for making sure that any use of caffeine in their product is safe. Now, caffeine, like any substance added to food, is considered a naturally, it's under the GRAS, the generally assumed safe ingredients, but it's expected to be used in a manner and added in an amount that is commonly consumed and would be safe for consumption. So in short, right, that cautionary tale that energy drinks are not heavily regulated by the FDA because they're more of a dietary supplement. So just something to be aware of as we think about what is in our can and how and what we are consuming. So the current guidelines for caffeine consumption, we know that energy drinks have a lot of caffeine, but there's other foods and beverages that also have caffeine. So the current recommendations is the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that adolescents ages 12 to 18 years old should not exceed 100 milligrams per day of caffeine. And this is all caffeine. So again, not just from our drinks, it's food sources and different things like that as well. And then no caffeine is recommended for children under 12 years old. So there's kind of a no tolerance level for that. Children under 12 should not have caffeine, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics. The Food and Drug Administration states that for most adults who are generally healthy, that consuming up to 400 milligrams of caffeine a day is not usually associated with dangerous negative effects. Again, this is for most healthy adults, but this will vary from person to person. And as we know, some people might be a little bit more sensitive to caffeine than not. The FDA also states that within that 400 milligrams of caffeine, that shouldn't be consumed all at one time. They usually say kind of 200 milligrams at one time. So your 200 milligrams maybe twice a day would get you that 400 maximum that the FDA says generally doesn't have any dangerous negative side effects. So here's just a little bit of a caffeine comparison chart. I know we are talking about energy drinks today, but I think putting it into perspective of a variety of other drinks and beverages is important to do. Caffeine inherently in itself is not bad for us, but oftentimes it's the amount. And I think it's even to be cognizant of how much caffeine we're consuming from coffee or from other sources, just in general for overall health and energy levels within kind of that broader context. So here's just a general chart that I have ranked from highest to lowest in the caffeine. And the important thing to note here is also serving size because that plays a big role ultimately in how much caffeine we're consuming. Serving size is important in food consumption, soda consumption. Being aware of what you're consuming, the quantity makes a big difference in overall caffeine intake. So, again, a regular coffee from Starbucks that is that venti, that 20 ounce, a general coffee recommendation is about 6 to 8 ounces. So you are getting quite a bit more caffeine when you do that venti. Now, going down the line, I have just a few other energy drinks listed from Bang, Celsius. Gatorade has a energy drink. As I mentioned, the whole sports drink versus energy drink can be quite confusing. And then we have our Monster Rockstar, and then all the way down to even fresh brewed black tea and fresh brewed green tea also has caffeine. So again, this chart doesn't list all of the sources of caffeine from our beverages, and it's not intended to endorse or kind of talk negatively about any specific business or company or product. It's just kind of giving you that picture of where certain products might fall on that caffeine comparison chart. So let's dive a little bit into what's inside the can. So I'm going to talk through some of the common ingredients. This list by all means is not exhaustive, and you are definitely encouraged to look at your product that you're consuming to identify what is in your specific can, your specific beverage. So to get started, caffeine is the primary stimulant that is usually added to energy drinks. It is that kind of main ingredient, and it can range from 500 to 400 milligrams. All caffeine that is added to beverages must be listed, especially if it's that primary ingredient. But the interesting thing is that caffeine can come from a lot of other sources that I'm going to talk about. And if caffeine comes from a different ingredient, then it doesn't have to be actually listed on that can. So if caffeine is added as that single standalone ingredient, the caffeine content must be listed as it's added to your energy beverage or whatever beverage you're choosing. Next, we have bitter orange. So, bitter orange is often promoted as a dietary supplement that is for weight loss and performance. However, research really shows that there's no conclusive evidence on the effectiveness of bitter orange. And so, we'll talk a little bit more about bitter orange as well, of the concerns when you think about performance and like banned substances and things like that. Guarana is another one, and it is from a natural plant source, but it does have caffeine. So if it is listed on your can, guarana, it may or may not be included in the total caffeine. So that's just something to be aware that, as I mentioned, caffeine as a standalone ingredient must be listed how much caffeine is present. But if they also add guarana into their energy drink, that caffeine comes from that natural plant source, and it might not tell you how much caffeine is coming from that added ingredient. Yohimbe, or it's also known as yohimbine. This has been promoted for athletic performance, but the funny thing is that it's promoted for athletic performance, but it's been associated with cardiac arrhythmia, blood pressure problems, heart attacks, and seizures. So although it has that promotion of athletic performance, the negative health impact when it comes to your heart health, as well as just overall health, has been documented that there are cases of concerns. It also often has inaccurate labeling when it's added to ingredients, and it actually has been restricted and banned in several countries. So that is one of those items that may be on your can, but it also might be banned because it is being sold in other countries that ban it as an ingredient to their formulation. Carnitine. So carnitine is a naturally present ingredient in many of our food. It is common, especially found in our meats and our dairies, and our body naturally produces carnitine. Why carnitine is added to energy drinks is because it supports energy production, but it doesn't have clear evidence that it supports and boosts your performance. So a lot of times you'll see that L-carnitine is added and it's promoted as an energy and performance boosting. L-carnitine does, again, help with that natural energy production because it is a part of what we produce and how it functions in the body with the metabolism of certain vitamins and minerals and just overall metabolism in general. And so that is going to be something that is often added. You can certainly find supplements over the counter as well that are specific for L-carnitine, but there's no clear evidence that it supports that performance boosting power. And then we have ginseng. Ginseng is a popular herbal stimulant. You will often find it added to a variety of things. You can find ginseng tea. All those different products are available. It's been around for a long time. It's traditionally found kind of with that ancient Chinese medicine. But again, the research is mixed, and there's really no supporting research to its effects on that energy production. If you consume it in moderation, ginseng might not be harmful, but when we think about the false claims around what these energy drinks can do in supporting and providing that energy and boosting performance, some of these added ingredients don't necessarily have the research that backs that they actually do those things like boosting performance. And then we have our B vitamins. B vitamins is the most common ingredient added to a lot of our energy drinks. Again, the false kind of conception is that these B vitamins give you energy, and they don't directly give you energy. However, they do help the body convert the food that you eat into energy. Now, a B vitamin is a water-soluble vitamin, so if you consume excess of what your body needs, it is just excreted out with your urine. So a lot of times people will take supplements that often have B vitamins. We can get plenty of B vitamins from our diet and the foods that we eat. So by adding B vitamins into these energy drinks, again, if your body doesn't need them, if you're not depleted in B vitamins, they're often just kind of excreted in that urine and aren't going to be used by the body. And then the last one that I have is taurine. It is an amino acid that is commonly found in our meat, fish, and eggs. And the claim is that it is claimed to boost our energy. Taurine is not an essential amino acid, but we do know that it does play an important role in our health, from our eye health to our immune function to our brain health, among other roles. Again, this is an important ingredient and an important nutrient for our body, but we can get plenty of taurine from the foods that we're eating, and that it does not actually have that claimed energy boost as what we see on those energy drink cans. So these are kind of the general overview of some of the common ingredients that you might encounter. So as I mentioned, there are some ones that are of concern that are added to energy drinks when we think about the ingredients. So I pulled this from the NCAA's banned substance list, and this is their 2025-2026 document. So you can go online, you can find this information, but looking under their banned substances and their drug classes under stimulants, you can see I've highlighted the ones in yellow that are what we just talked about. So caffeine and sources of caffeine, green tea extract, guarana, yerba mate, which I did not talk about, but it is a common one, and you can find yerba mate added to many of our energy drinks as well as yerba mate specific drinks. And then that last one is that saffron, and that is that bitter orange, which I had mentioned on the previous slide as well. So although we think that some of these ingredients aren't harmful to us, if you are an athlete or if you are concerned about your athletic performance, or if you want to do, college sports, or you have random drug testing, these are on that list of banned substances when we think about our athletic performance. So although they're promoted as in performing enhancements, they're often banned because of A, the dangers, and B, kind of that uncertain clarity of what the impacts ultimately are. So just know if you're working with teens or athletes, that some of these sources in energy drinks, as I mentioned in the beginning, they are not regulated by the FDA. So sometimes we don't know what is included in them. And there might actually be certain products listed that are not listed on the ingredient list that might be included. That is just one of the challenges and downfalls and dangers of using dietary supplements, whether it's a drink form, a powder form, or a pill form. So then moving on to the next thing of what's inside the can, sugar. So energy drinks often are full of sugar. There might be some non-sugar, or they'll say zero sugar, but sugar is usually one of the main ingredients that's often in these energy drinks. And energy drinks can consume anywhere from 6 to 21 teaspoons of added sugar. This does vary on, again, serving size, how much you're consuming, and the types of different products. We know that added sugar contributes to weight gain, type 2 diabetes, tooth decay, cardiovascular disease, and a slew of other health concerns. But if you are trying to still take your energy drinks and you say, well, I don't want all that sugar, so you choose the zero sugar ones are going to use artificial sweeteners. These artificial sweeteners provide no calories or added sugar, but they're not necessarily risk-free. So there's more and more research that is looking at the impacts of artificial sweeteners and how they may contribute to cardiovascular instances, how they alter gut health, which ultimately gut health and brain health and all your health is connected. So although the sugar isn't there, we do have other concerns when we are consuming artificial sweeteners. So the basis line is right. Anything of too much is not always a good thing. So whether you're consuming too much of sugar or too much of artificial sweeteners, neither of them are going to support our health in the optimal way that we want it to be supported. We know that there are many sources of added sugar in our diet, and that many of these come from the beverages that we consume, including those sugar sweetened energy drinks. On average, the American adult consumes about 17 teaspoons of added sugar every day. That is 2 to 3 times more than the recommended amount. And probably more alarming is that kids 2 to 19 years old don't consume that much less than adults. So on average, that's 16 teaspoons of added sugar every day by the average 2 to 19-year-old. Now, 2 to 19 is a big range, and we know that probably that kind of teenage years is where most of that added sugar is going to be coming from. And so a lot of that is our sugar sweetened beverages. About 50% of the added sugar in our diets come from those sugar sweetened beverages. And then we have our snacks as well. And so snacks and our sweets account for about 30%. One can of a 12-ounce regular soda has about 10 teaspoons of added sugar, where an energy drink that's 16 ounce could have up to 13 and a half teaspoons of added sugar. So it actually has more added sugar than what we would think compared to a soda can. And then the current guidelines, according to the American Heart Association, is that we are not to exceed 6 teaspoons per day for women and 9 teaspoons per day for men. There's generally not a safe recommendation for kids, although the American Heart Association and some organizations say to stick to that 6 teaspoons maximum per day for kids. And then obviously no added sugar is recommended for children 2 and under. So again, the point of kind of emphasis of the energy drinks is it might not be necessarily the other ingredients in the caffeine, but the dangers and kind of that added sugar in our diet is a challenge and a problem that many of us have. We have overconsumption of added sugar, and looking at what we're drinking, energy drinks included, is a primary starting point to see how much sugar and how we can reduce how much sugar we're consuming on an average day. So, what does caffeine do to me? We might not think that caffeine is dangerous. We might think that caffeine helps me stay focused, it helps me be alert, all these different things. Some people just drink energy drinks or coffee for the taste, and it's not so much for the energy. But we do know that caffeine impacts our body, the physiological responses that happen. So, in the short term, we know that caffeine increases our heart rate and it increases our heart palpitations. It can raise our blood pressure. It can sometimes cause anxiety and jitters. People who are very sensitive to caffeine often can get that where they feel very jittery and anxious. Some people will upset their stomach, nausea, headaches. And then the other big thing is that insomnia or sleep disruptions. So, us consuming caffeine, we might not think that it's impacting us, but if you find that you're not sleeping well at night, take a look at your caffeine consumption and what time of day are you consuming it? How much are you consuming? And that might be contributing to that insomnia or sleep disruptions if you're not sleeping through the night. Now, the long-term impacts, again, sleep problems on the long term. You can also have more irritability and mood swings, increased stress hormone levels. When you're constantly having kind of high blood pressure and anxiety, it often raises that cortisol and those stress hormones. Often we need that higher dose of caffeine to achieve that desired effect. When caffeine is stopped, you'll find that you might have withdrawal symptoms or you might be needing it or craving it. We have that increased risk of kind of panic, risk taking, increased risk of substance abuse and use has also been seen with caffeine, which I'll talk a little bit about in the coming slides. But when we think about typically sometimes at a bar, somebody might have an energy drink mixed with alcohol. And so that often exacerbates some of the short-term and long-term dangers. And then we know that, as I just mentioned, the increased sugar intake, sugary products over the long term can contribute to chronic diseases when consumed in excess. And then individuals who have a higher intake of caffeine often have more difficulty quitting other substances and limiting alcohol use when combined with caffeine. So there is something as too much of a good thing, as I've mentioned. Caffeine can help us. It can give us maybe that little bit of energy that we're looking for, but at the same time, we also have this danger of caffeine toxicity. And so this is basically just too much caffeine that we've intaked. Includes vomiting, high blood pressure, racing heart rate, heart rhythm problems, and then sometimes maybe disorientation and hallucinations. And this caffeine toxicity is pretty common in the younger population. Again, those teens, adolescents, and as you see in my next bullet point here, that each year thousands of people, even many of them are children, receive medical treatment for caffeine use. So from 2011 to 2023, there was an increase of 17% exposure rates, according to the U.S. Poison Center. And then from 2022 to 2023, there was a 24.2% increase in pediatric exposure to energy drinks. Again, this is from the American Poison Center. And of those, really 78% of those were unintentional exposures, meaning that the kid did not know either A, that the drink had caffeine in it or how much caffeine was in it. So when we think about the dangers of too much caffeine, the adolescents and the youth and the younger audiences are definitely more susceptible to having this kind of caffeine overdose or to have these emergency treatments that are needed because of too much caffeine consumption. Youth with certain health conditions also seen exasperated problems. So if individuals have heart problems, seizures, migraines, they may be more at risk for caffeine-related problems compared to other people. And then we do know that fatalities have been linked to energy drink consumption. They are rare, but they can occur. And there was a pretty recent one in the news as of last year and 2023. So excess consumption of energy drinks can trigger cardiovascular events, specifically arrhythmias, cardiac arrest. And this is especially true when it is combined with alcohol or other stimulants or if underlying conditions exist. So if somebody already has an underlying heart condition or underlying other medical condition, again, consuming these energy drinks can be dangerous. In 2024, Panera actually discontinued a charged lemonade drink that they had after it was linked to two deaths and some other lawsuits. The individuals who did unfortunately pass in the situation did have those underlying health conditions. One was a young female who was in her early 20s. And again, so the large 30-ounce size has about 300 milligrams of caffeine. The challenge with drinks like this is that again, there isn't really an oversight, and restaurants and other retail establishments serving beverages with caffeine or these other energy drinks added to them are not required by law to say how much caffeine is listed in their products that they serve. So when you are using caffeine or finding restaurants or establishments that are having these kind of quote energy drinks available, asking them how much caffeine is in them is going to be the best way to truly know what that danger might be to you with how much caffeine is in them for that consumption. And as I mentioned, we know that energy drinks impact and increase our blood pressure. Here was a study that was done in 2022 looking at the blood pressure and heart rates in children and teenagers who had consumed energy drinks. And so you can see the orange line there is the energy drink group, and then the blue line is that placebo group, or the ones who did not consume the energy drinks. And we can see that after 4 hours of consuming an energy drink, the energy drink group still had elevated systolic blood pressure. So, again, just emphasizing that although we might not feel or think that energy drink consumption is dangerous, when we're talking about teens and kind of the impact on health, that is elevated 4 hours after consumption. Now, put that with an adult who also has hypertension or other blood pressure issues, that could put them in a very dangerous position with that elevated blood pressure of kind of exceeding and putting them in an emergency situation. And now, kind of moving on to some healthier energy boost. So again, we all might need that little pick me up of a cup of coffee, or if you choose to do an energy drink, being an informed consumer, I think is what we can say and is the best route to go for anything we consume, whether it's an energy drink, whether it's a sugar sweetened beverages, whether it's the food that we're putting in our body. Knowing at least what is in those foods and those beverages is going to help us make those informed decisions. Now, how we can get those healthier energy boosts without relying on caffeine from our coffee and our energy drinks is kind of a couple key points here. So, the first one is healthy eating, and then engaging in physical activity and improving our sleep habits. And I'm going to talk on each of those in a little bit more detail here. So the first one is eating healthy. We know that building a balanced plate is key to energy. So with that, we have our My Plate, which is our current dietary guidelines and recommendations. The current recommendations are to fill half your plate with fruits and vegetables, a quarter of your plate with grains, focusing primarily on those whole grains. And then we have a quarter of our plate as proteins, and then having some dairy along that side as well. So, what building a balanced plate looks like is looking at your plate and identifying, you don't have to have all the components, although we would like you to have all the components. Do you have at least three of those components? Do you have that protein? Do you have a healthy carbohydrate? And do you have some fat and some fruits and vegetables that go with that meal? So when we want to aim to build that protein, what happens is that we want to avoid those roller coasters of our up and down blood sugar swings. Generally, what happens is if people take an energy drink, they're just drinking that energy drink plain. They're often not consuming it with food. And as I mentioned, energy drinks often have a lot of added sugar. So, what that happens is you drink that energy drink and your blood sugar spikes up. So, it's a little bit of a roller coaster ride. Your blood sugar spikes. And because then it's spiked, you're now going to have a crash. And then you have this rapid decrease of that blood sugar. And often, when that blood sugar crash happens, is when we feel fatigue, when we feel tired, irritable, when we have those mood swings. And then, when we're tired from that blood sugar crash, what do we turn to again? We think we need another energy drink, or we think we need another cup of coffee, or we think we need something else to boost us back up. So we tend to get in this roller coaster. You have an energy drink for the morning for breakfast, and then by noon, you're kind of crashing and you need another energy drink to feel like it needs to pick you up. So when we have high sugar foods, specifically our beverages, or even any sweetened beverage or sweetened foods, without anything with them, we tend to go on this little roller coaster ride of our blood sugars up and down. So how do we balance that out? Is we need to eat a lot of fiber. Fiber helps to make us feel full. Fiber also helps to balance our blood sugars, and it's kind of a slower release carbohydrate. So filling our plate with lots of fruits and vegetables is going to give us that more sustained energy. We want to eat healthy fats. Again, fats are something that are digested slowly in the body, so they provide a little bit more of that sustained energy. What we want to avoid is those high ultra processed sweetened foods, those simple carbohydrates, as what we like to call them. So your simple white breads, your simple rice, and even then your simple energy sweetened beverages. So those are going to spike the blood sugar quickly and are not going to give us that sustained energy that we're looking for to get us through the day. So having just an energy for breakfast, you crash and then you're not having that sustained energy to get you through your morning. It's not helping you concentrate. We know that having a full belly and having a good balanced meal, kids do better in school. They perform better in tests. Employers have better employees that perform better at work. So we often turn to that caffeine, those energy drinks to improve our performance when really we can turn to the foods that we're eating that are going to give us more of that long term and ultimately that better performance physically, mentally, emotionally, everything in between. We know that physical activity helps us regulate a variety of things. The current guidelines are 150 minutes or more of accumulated moderate to vigorous activity per week, and then 2 to 3 resistance training activities, as well as focusing on some of that balance and flexibility training. The benefits of physical activity, we know that it increases oxygen. We know that when we're tired and we have kind of this lack of oxygen, we just feel a little down, a little sluggish, a little slow. And so by exercising, it boosts our oxygen, which ultimately helps our body operate better, helps our brain think clearer and function better. It also helps our body create and use that energy. It improves our sleep, which is going to be the next slide. And then it releases endorphins, which is kind of that sense of an energy rush and that feel good hormone. So after you work out, right, if you've ever been really tired and you've drug yourself to the gym or went for a walk, you have energy after you leave because it gives you kind of that release of endorphins and helps boost that energy and kind of gives you that pick me up without having to turn to an energy drink. And then we have boost our sleep. So we know that our guidelines for sleep are 7 to 9 hours for adults and 8 to 10 hours for teens. Teens are not getting the 8 to 10 hours. We know that. And so that's often why they're feeling sluggish and tired and maybe turning to these energy drinks because they're feeling like they need that pick me up and it's being promoted as that pick me up to them. So the benefits of sleep is when your body recovers and repairs itself, and that's also when it restores those energy stores. So our brain uses energy throughout the day to function, to think. Our muscles use energy to get us to and from. And so when we sleep, our body kind of helps restore and replenish those energy. We know that improved sleep boosts cognitive function. So your mental clarity is better. You're able to perform better on work functions, on school homework or assignments. And then we also know that mood is improved and that mood regulation is improved. And often when we're feeling kind of down and sluggish, or when we're feeling maybe a little bit like depressed or anxious, we then tend to also turn to those energy drinks because we think it will help when ultimately it's not going to help that bigger picture and it might make that dysregulation even more predominant. And then the last two is that hydration. Often we are very dehydrated. As a society, most of us don't drink enough water. Drinking water helps to maximize our physical performance, improves concentration, and improves our energy level. So instead of turning to that energy drink, we want to turn to that glass of water. We want to turn to those very hydrating foods and to make sure that we are, keeping our cells and our brain and our body nice and hydrated. Green tea is a great option. So as you remember from that previous chart, green tea does have some caffeine in it, but it is very low compared to our other energy drinks. And the benefit of green tea is that it is loaded with antioxidants, and antioxidants basically help the cells be healthier. It helps protect them from free radicals, and it helps just keep us overall healthy and preventing chronic diseases and just that really overall big picture. So drinking green tea not only will give you a little bit of that caffeine boost that you might be looking for, but provides a surplus of antioxidants and other loaded nutrients that are really important for our body. So choosing a green tea that's unsweetened if you can, right? We still don't want to add that added sugar to our diet. So a green tea is another great option that is going to be a hydrating effect. And so just some key takeaways here as we wrap up. It is very important to read the label. As I mentioned, being an informed consumer is kind of one of the biggest things that I preach as a dietitian. It doesn't matter if you choose or not to choose something. It's about what is in that product and you being aware of that product and what you're putting in your body. So you need to read the label. You need to look at how much caffeine is per serving. And you need to look at your total per servings of can. Sometimes there might be 2 servings in a can. And if it says there's 100 milligrams of caffeine in one serving, but then you drink that whole can, you're ultimately getting 200 milligrams of caffeine in that one setting. You want to make sure that you're watching those added sugars and then reading that ingredient list too to see what those extra caffeine sources are. You do want to keep your total caffeine intake in check. So, taking a look at what you're drinking throughout the day and comparing those caffeine consumptions. So, if you're not sure how much caffeine is in something, you definitely read the label, or you can also usually find that information online. And then keep moderation in mind. So, again, it's all about moderation, whether you choose to drink energy drinks or not. No more than one energy drink per day for healthy adults. And of course, this is balanced with other caffeine sources. So if you find you're drinking a lot of coffee, you're going to have a little bit of a give and a take. And then the recommendation, remember, is none for teens and kids. And then you want to avoid having energy drinks or a high caffeine intake before bed. So at least 6 hours before bedtime. So that afternoon energy drink is probably not going to help you sleep. It's going to cause those sleep disruptions and ultimately kind of just create this chronic cycle of you being tired and needing those energy drinks day in and day out. And as I mentioned, we want to avoid mixing alcohol and other stimulants that can have those really negative consequences. And then the last important thing is eating a nutritious, well-balanced diet for energy. Again, that is our main and primary source of energy for our body, and staying nice and hydrated as well as nourished is ultimately going to give you that energy that you need to get sustained throughout the day for the normal life that comes our way with all the stressors and all the busyness that we have to deal with. So with that, that is the end of my presentation, and we can take some questions.
There was a question in chat. It said, consider the low caffeine content in chocolate, candy, and other edibles. Isn't the advice of no caffeine for children under 12 too strict?
So, the under 12 for caffeine, really, when we look at how much caffeine is in chocolate and the amount that people are consuming, chocolate often has added sugars. So, the recommendation, again, is still not to consume a lot of added sugar foods. So, the recommendation might be a little bit strict, but that's really focusing more on those drinks when we think about those higher caffeine sources. The amount that chocolate might provide is going to be very minimum, especially when we think of just an ounce serving is really considered what is appropriate for chocolate. So moderation is key in anything for sure, but the higher caffeine content usually comes from those beverages. I mean, there's 12-year-olds that are drinking coffee and things like that. So that's really where the more concern comes in. Of course, there's going to be caffeine that is naturally found in some of those foods like our chocolates. And there's less consideration about that than really focusing on those high caffeine beverages.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Chelsea. I have not seen any other questions roll in yet to the chat box or the Q&A. So with that, we'll start kind of wrap it up here. We do want to thank you, Chelsea, for your time today, for taking the opportunity to present your information to us. I'm sure a lot of us heard some new tips and tricks and probably learned some new information about energy drinks that we've never heard before. We encourage you all that are on today to complete our survey that's up here on the screen now. You can scan the QR code or it will be sent to your email as soon as we get done with the presentation today. We are always open to thoughts, feedback, and we will be taking considerations for future webinars. So if you have any topics that you want to hear more about, please let us know all about that in the survey, and those will come back to us as we prepare for our next series. If you would like more information or additional resources, please reach out to your local extension agent. If you're not sure where your local office is, you can find it by going to ksre.kstate.edu. You'll be able to hover over your county and find the location of your local office. So with that, and there's no more questions, this completes our series. So stay tuned for upcoming series into the 2026 calendar year. I'm sure we'll have a whole list of great new topics coming out that you'll want to be aware of. So thank you all for coming today and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Chelsea, thank you so much.
Thank you.